won't let you. I won't let you fade away. I won't let.
What's up guys, hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be going over some updates predominantly for Bitcoin, but before I get into Bitcoin specifically, I want to go over the Bitcoin dominance chart because I had what I believe to be quite a bearish signal pop up as an alert just a few minutes ago. But before I get to that main update, I want to preface it here again. So we see Bitcoin dominance is running into macro descending resistance here with this zone that goes all the way back to May of 2017, multi-year resistance here coming into play recently, going back to mid to late June, around 65-66% on the Bitcoin dominance. Obviously we've had the uptrend support here that I've pointed out in recent videos, had a two bi-weekly candle closes below. So at this point, one thing I did point out recently here is the similarity between here and here, because we saw these high bearish volume vector candles printed, then afterwards immediately we saw an increasing bullish volume vector, these yellow candles here printed, and it could be looking, as I said, then very similar. So really what we could see is potentially another relief, such as we did see here. We could see a relief upwards. I think that's definitely still a possibility, obviously. So I don't think it's the most likely case right now, but if we do see that over the the next few weeks, over the next couple of months or so, then I think again this macro resistance zone here will still come into play. So I think if we do see a relief anywhere upwards towards like 67-68%, maybe with some wicks upwards towards 70%, because that would push it upwards towards the 618 here, this sitting inside pitchfork channel that I have on here. Now what's also interesting is that once we saw this was kind of like the first major drop, really outside of this one right here. I guess this one would be kind of the first, but this was really the main one, because obviously you can see here this drop just happened really in one candle. And then once we saw this relief right here, this was struggling here. It was straddling the median of this uptrend. So this right here is already an indication that the uptrend was, dying off. It was, fizzling out, reaching its end stages due to the fact that it's struggling to get above the median of its uptrend channel. Now, like I said, we've seen these candle closes below here at this point too. Right now, the current bi-weekly candle is quite red. If we go down to the daily here real quick and look at here, we can see that once we had this first initial sell-off or drop here, which is when the first bi-weekly candle would have closed below the uptrend, we can see that so far it's just been chopping sideways, been consolidating. I think at this point, especially with what I'm about to get into as the update for this chart, that we're going to continue to see it go down. Also, generally just because of the fact that Bitcoin, obviously this is all pertaining to my own biases and where I personally think it is, but I also think a lot of people will generally agree that Bitcoin is more likely than not in its final stages, has one more final big thrust in the current bull run, unless all of those whom have been speculating and more so leaning towards the idea of an extended bull cycle this time around end up being right. But for right now, I think the more reasonable way to look at it is that Bitcoin's heading into its final thrust. There won't be in a significantly extended bull cycle, which means the Bitcoin dominance here if that is the case, we're already seeing really the earliest moments of the Bitcoin dominance tanking and basically heading into that parabolic portion of alt season that has been delayed many times at this point, that a lot of people have been eagerly waiting for. Now, here we can see on the RSI that we're continuing to move lower here below the purple zone that I've pointed out recently. This horizontal support here that has been intact since March of 2023, so over 2 years at this point. Really just not too much longer, maybe a couple months or so after. So you see right here is when really this entire portion here is when this horizontal support on the RSI has been held. So basically, really, this is characterized as horizontal support on the RSI for the entirety just about of this uptrend for the Bitcoin dominance. Now, the major update here is on the Heiken Ashes, which I'll get to that here in just a second, but I quickly just want to point out here on the traditional candlestick chart, which is what we're currently looking at, we can see this orange uptrend here. Currently, one thing I'm waiting for here is to see the RVI go below here. That has not happened just yet. This has been an uptrend that began back in August of 2022, August 15th specifically, but at this point, this is a 3-year long uptrend, which I think it is more likely than not going to be broken soon. Now, switching over here to the Heiken Ashes, the indicator or the alert that I had been waiting on that went off was on, again here, the RVI. We can see here that this yellow horizontal line on the value of 50 on the RVI. You can see here outside of this minor blip right here back in around late February 2023, which was, let's see, right here, all the way up until current times. Again, really, it's going to basically synonymous with that horizontal support that I pointed out on the RSI just a few moments ago, which this has been, you know, down here, this has been intact really since the beginning of this overall Bitcoin dominance bull run or uptrend. And this just recently, as you can see here, quite a pretty violent, you know, this is, I mean, it's almost purely vertical going down here ever since the Bitcoin dominance topped out at around 65, 66%. And this is quite a significant drop here. This is the lowest that it's been since back in Q4 of 2022. So, I mean, we're seeing a multi-year data point here that's with this correlated with this horizontal support that had been intact for many, many years, finally being broken. Again, like I said, as it appears very much so to be the state for Bitcoin entering into its final thrust, which is historically really generally correlative to when the we see the Bitcoin dominance here really start to tank, and we start to see the altcoins enter into its parabolic period of their bull runs after it has exited their expansion phases. As is, you know, obviously we see the altcoins go into accumulation, then it expands, starts to have an upwards constructive movement towards the upside, and then it finally, once the Bitcoin dominance starts to really tank, we start to see those parabolic portions of alt season that, I mean, especially, you know, really obviously the most recent one would have been back in 2020 to 2021, very euphoric times. We, again, have not seen anything like that for altcoins. Just about every single altcoin has struggled to set new all-time highs outside of Solana with a very brief and minor wick, and even XRP also has made new all-time highs, setting, you know, movement into price discovery, which I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that its lawsuits and all its legal battles are, you know, back in the past and not a problem anymore. And I think it's kind of really compensating for the fact that it struggled a lot back during the 2020 to 2021 bull run because of those legal battles. Now, one thing I do want to point out here is we can see that ever since, so if you look right here, I'll zoom in a bit more so you all can see it a bit better, but here we can see purple vectors. These are increasing bearish volume vectors. A lot of times when you see these printed at lows, now you really need to properly discern where and where not a low range actually is. But in this case, this was, you know, considered here an all-time low range. So it being printed here was indicative of the fact that the lows were set, that it's entering or will soon begin an uptrend, which obviously the case here is that did happen. Now, let's see, what was this? November of 2022. So we're encroaching just a few months out from November 2025. Again, 3 years. And this is the first time here we can see there's the last biweekly candle here was a purple increasing bearish volume candle. Again, like I said, in roughly 3 years is the first time we've seen one of these. We go back before these two right here. The last time we saw purple vectors was here and here. And you can see that this was in the top range right as it was leading into tanking. Before that, we saw some here, and then obviously it went back up again. So this is like, for example, this would have been the lows. This is obviously at the highs. This is kind of a gray period right here. So really these purple increasing bearish volume vector candles right here were, in this case, because it's kind of printed in this gray zone, this ambiguous kind of in the middle of an uptrend right here. As it continued to go higher. This right here was more so just indicating that this was the bottom of this intermediate correction where it was going to continue to go higher. So again, like I said, this right here, this increasing bearish volume vector candle right here is very reminiscent, I think, of these. You can also see here that if you can see this is also within the exact same zone. All four, or actually there's 5 here within this zone. Every time, you know, going all the way back to February 2020, so over 5 years at this point, that we've seen these purple increasing bearish volume vector candles printed right here. Guess what it signaled? It signaled a massive downturn in the Bitcoin dominance. And that, again, like I said, with that RVI that I pointed out down here, if I go back to the traditional candlesticks, bring up back all these tools, again, we can see we're waiting on this uptrend to be broken. I think it will, more likely than not. Again, like I said, horizontal resistance or support rather on the RSI. We've seen the exaggerated bearish divergence here. We're seeing genuine multiple degrees of bearish divergence in the stock RSI. The MACD is heavily topped out higher here than it was back here, but yet we can see the price is in a decline with the resistance. That is generally going to be a bearish sign. And then also out of the fact that, again, we can see here with the vector candles on the traditional candlesticks on the biweekly, we're also seeing with these yellow vectors here something that's, again, showing that this time around it's not going to be like here. We'll receive relief. More likely than not, we're going to, I think, continue to go further and further down. And really that important threshold to pass here for the Bitcoin dominance is going to be getting below right around this level right here, which is generally correlated to the 382 or the flip side of the 618 of the inside pitchfork channel here. And getting below that 50% threshold will really be a big moment for the altcoins, because when obviously so, commonsensically speaking, once we see the Bitcoin dominance get below that value of 50%, that is indicative of the fact that altcoins are gaining dominance in the market in terms of market capitalization and valuation, as opposed to Bitcoin taking that leadership role there. But like I said, there's still definitely possibility for one more relief and one more delay, and then finally we see the Bitcoin dominance go down. We finally see that parabolic alt season happen. But right now I think things are looking very good for a bearish case, for the positive sentiment of seeing that parabolic season for altcoins. Now, if you look here at the 4-hour chart, you can see here with the descending resistance zone that I've pointed out. Actually, this is a new one that I've redrawn. I haven't shown this one yet. But we can see here that the 4 hours breaking above it. I think that's very good. We still need to hold this 50 EMA band here, which is generally correlated with this descending resistance zone. So anywhere in the 200 EMA as well is basically on the same area. So I think at this point, holding anything above 150,000 is going to be very crucial. Still waiting for the RSI to get back above the 618 here. Haven't yet to see that. Every time that happens, for example, the past instance where we saw it happen right here was when Bitcoin went from around 109,000 all the way up to 123,000. So once we start to see the RSI here go back above that 618, likely, in my opinion, going to be indicative of the fact that it's continuing to go higher here and going higher than $123,000 and entering more and more into that price discovery up towards 130, 140, 150,000. I think even far higher than that. But let's see here. If we go to the 12-hour chart, I've been updating this on the post section of my channel. Things are looking really good here. Again, like I said, we've seen the look here. There's this right here is a I mean, it's kind of in a gray area. It's somewhat of an exaggerated hidden bullish divergence. But right here was lower than back here. But yet here we can see on the price that it's been ascending. So really, it's a hidden bullish divergence at that point, rather than an exaggerated variant of so. Again, like I said, we're seeing the stock RSI shoot back up towards the upper bound, which is generally a positive thing. We're seeing the MACD flip bullish here, heading towards the 0 point, getting back above this and shooting higher. Up here towards this green zone and higher is going to be very crucial. Once last time that happened was again right here when it went up to 123,000, very similar to what I pointed out of the 618 on the prior 4-hour chart. We're seeing the histogram MACD here turn bullish again. We're seeing the ASO flip bullish here recently, so I think things are really looking quite positive. But really what's mainly important here is the fact that this descending resistance here is still intact. There's still this vector zone here, which goes up to 118.4 thousand. Very crucial to see Bitcoin come above this, retest it, and go higher, or just completely, blow it out of the water and continue to go higher. But really, at this point, getting back above, really around 118.5, 108, upwards towards 119,000 is going to be very important. Then outside of that, obviously getting back above 120,000 is a nice psychological value there. Then obviously getting back above this small vector zone here that goes upwards towards 121.4 $1,000. Now let's say that we do see further rejection here. Maybe we'll continue to come out flatline here, maybe make some sort of type of double bottom, go higher. Maybe we'll come down to these vector zones down around 109,000 or so, continue to go higher, likely meet the 200 EMA if that happens. I still definitely think that's possible. Actually, I'm gonna see if I can, let's see, I'm not even sure what the Bitcoin CME is. Let's see if I can type it out this way. Okay, I don't remember. I'm not going to bring it up. Anyways, the CME gap's been filled as well recently with this move down here. There might be a tiny portion of it that hasn't been fulfilled, but most of it's been fulfilled at this point. But like I said, I've been kind of in the last video eyeing this zone here, a retesting of around 112 down towards like 110, 109,000. So again, we could definitely see another rejection here and go a little bit lower and then finally move towards the upside. But right now I think things are looking quite positive. As I said, all these indicators are looking very good here. That 4-hour chart's looking quite positive as well, but we still need to see those upper values broken towards the upside. If we look here at the daily, still below here, this trend line here, the candle close support that goes all the way back to the uptrend that began back in the first week of April earlier this year. Getting back above this is going to be very important. At this point, depending upon when it happens, it's really going to be coinciding with getting back above here at around $120,000 on the dot or so. Again, like I said, could definitely come down and retest the 50 EMA band here again, somewhere around like $112,000, $110,000, $111,000 or so, and then continue to go higher. Or even, obviously, like I said, could come down to this vector zone here on the daily. This is more of a notable vector zone here that correlates here with the 200 estimated moving average. So those are some things I believe to be looking out for. Again, we can see here that the RSI is poised upwards, could potentially break this 618, which again will be a positive sign. Stock RSI has been moving up. If it breaks this median here, goes to the upper bound, again, another positive sign. Again, we've seen the daily flip bullish as well. Obviously, this is going to be relatively similar to the 12-hour because they're basically very close time frames to each other. The RVI here has been moving up, seeing it break its 50 point or its value of 50 or its 0 point, as I like to call it, is going to be a positive sign. Right now, the bear sentiment on the ASO is gaining dominance here, but it looks like it could potentially be weakening, and we might see a bullish cross here that would either coincide with a rejection here along this like that, or maybe obviously I think continue to go higher. Whether or not the reversals here, or more so in the short to medium term, we're going to see the Bitcoin continue to go significantly higher here. I don't particularly think it matters. I think when it comes to the kind of the longer term, especially on a yearly basis, but even over the next I guess suppose like 3 to 4 months would be more so properly a medium term. I think we'll see Bitcoin higher than 123,000 over the next 3 to 4 months, and especially longer. Going into later this year, perhaps sometime early Q1 of next year, if the bull run does extend a little bit longer, bleeding outside of 2025 and in 2026. Look here at the 2-week. One thing I pointed out here was that we saw the RSI go below the median of the Bollinger Bands here. Last time that happened was here when we saw this 12% retrace out of the 50 EMA band. I pointed out this could potentially happen here again. So far, we've seen the RSI come almost back down to how oversold it was right here. We're already starting to see the RSI come back up here, which this could be what's happening right here could be very similar to what happened right here. So basically, to extrapolate this out, we could potentially be seeing something along these lines, where we're going to see this brief relief here back up to the horizontal resistance somewhere around 119, 120K, and then continue to see the price move back down here into this 50 EMA band, something along those lines, anywhere down to maybe as low as approximately $106,000. But seeing this RSI go back above here, the median of the Bollinger Bands is going to be very important in indicating and solidifying a further movement here towards the upside. Now also, if I zoom in, there was an increasing bearish volume vector here. Now if this is indeed here the local lows, and we're going to see Bitcoin bounce higher, this could be a good sign. But again, also at the same time, let me see if I can go back and find a similar instance. Like for example, we kind of saw something similar right here where we saw these increasing bearish volume vectors printed here, obviously within this low range, but we obviously saw Bitcoin trickle a little bit lower here. So again, we could see something similar to here, where basically this could be indicating here that we're close to the lows, but we might see one more trickle lower and then see Bitcoin continue to go higher here on this 2-day chart. But really, it's something I've been going over, I feel like a good bit recently. There's still definitely the possibility to retest this uptrend zone here, where also the 200 EMA would come into play, which would, we could see Bitcoin go anywhere down to around $92,000 approximately. But at this point, I don't feel like that's the most likely scenario. Look here at the M2 chart that I've been going over a lot. We're seeing the M2 bounce back up here. Still not really sure whether or not this is going to continue to go higher or not. If this is really finally the top of the M2, we're going to see it go down. If this is a top, like I said, we would likely, if we see the correlation continue to play out here, we'd see Bitcoin top out sometime like late September, October. But obviously, if the M2 continues to go up here and we continue to see this correlation between Bitcoin and the global M2, then that's going to push the top for Bitcoin probably closer towards like late November, December, maybe January, February, quarter 1 of next year, maybe even longer. Like I said earlier on in this video, perhaps Bitcoin is in an extended bull run, and this isn't really the final thrust. And essentially, what we would see here is we'd see Bitcoin continue to make one more move up here, then it retraces again, and then just continues to go higher. And we see this, as we've seen here so far, this gradual stair stepping, and we see just continue to see this over the next, year or longer, leading into 2026, which again, as I've said plenty of times, essentially beating a dead horse at this point. I don't think that's most likely, but it's definitely possible. We're still waiting on this weekly resistance here on the RSI to be broken. With the move upwards recently, we saw the RSI get very close to it, but we saw this rejection here. Right now it's moving upwards. It's crossing above, just barely so, the median of the Bollinger Bands, which could again be a very good sign. But it all really just depends upon going forward, what's going to happen over, August is going to be a pretty important a month. Typically, post-halvings, August as a month is typically a good month. Outside of that, generally August is kind of almost a break-even month, or like a 1 to 2% bullish month, or down to like a negative 7% bearish month. But like I said, post-halving years, August has typically been a pretty good month. Not an insanely good month, but at least a pretty good month. Look here at this weekly chart. Let's see, was it that chart that okay, yeah. So on this chart in the last video, one of the things that I pointed out is the fact that I think that this move here is very much so reminiscent of what's happening here, but right now what's happening here is happening on a longer time scale than what happened here. One of the things that I did when I was going over this is, if you take a bar pattern here, I really honestly just need to get a lot of what of the stuff I have on these charts. I've had so many things on these charts for months. I probably just need to clean them up a bit. But if you take the bar pattern here, you can see that this looks very, and stretch it out to make it look more like so. You can see here that it's really basically the same structure. And one of the things I pointed out was that we're seeing basically roughly a double. Like this here is, so far, let's see, this was, what, 8 bars? It's probably more than 16 bars. So it's at 18 bars currently, so it's basically double. So this here, compared to here, temporally speaking, we're seeing about a doubling in the duration of the playing out of these patterns. Each of these drops here, these corrections, was 2 bars. This one here was 4. Currently, we're on the 4th candle, so if this plays out, then that means the next weekly candle here, beginning on August 11th, will be a bullish candle, that it would be synonymous to this candle right here. So we would likely see, I think, a pretty decent candle, at least back upwards towards this resistance here, somewhere towards 100. I'll give a range, like 128 to 132,000. What's also interesting is, if you look here, this white trend line here, this lowermost one, we can see here that this pattern that I'm pointing out kept butting its head along this resistance and finally broke it. And that's exactly what is happening again right here with what I believe could potentially be the second iteration of this same underlying structure, where basically, as I pointed out in that last video, is that it looks kind of like an ascending wedge that has a deviation towards the upside. So look here at this chart, we're seeing here, like I said, the resistance here on the RSI here had been broken with the Heiken Ashes, as you can see here, but it's on back below it. At this point, it's maintaining this yellow zone here at the lowest boundary is going to be very important. I mean, all things considered, I think eventually we'll see this bounce here and continue to go higher. This is one of the big things I went over in the last video. This basically, just to briefly sum it up here, as we can see this rising wedge pattern that has a deviation here towards the upside. Again, very similar to what I was going over right here in these instances on that those prior charts there. So and obviously this is going back here to early 2017, and in 2017 here we can see the same type of pattern where we see an ascending or rising wedge here. We see this deviation here towards the upside. So if we see it play out very much so precisely, again, we might see a run up here to the resistance and then a pretty significant move at worst case scenario down to the support somewhere down to under 15,000. So basically we would see a move from around 150k here at 150k all the way down towards our 115,000, and then Gonna move back up here towards C or 5, ending off the bull market, I think, most likely speaking, in terms of how I view it happening, roughly towards, again, the all-time Fibonacci extension here that I've gone over so many times in this chart with respect to the phases and the cycles within the framework I use for Bitcoin. The what I believe to be the fundamental bear to bull structure of Bitcoin that I have evidenced going all the way back to its first cycle, which is this right here is the first cycle for Bitcoin. This right here was the second cycle for Bitcoin, and currently right here is the first phase of cycle 3 for Bitcoin. And once this bull run ends, we'll head into phase 2 of cycle 3. And phase 2 of cycle 2 was this back here. So I think the upcoming bear market and the bull market after the current one will structurally mimic this right here, but just it will take a longer time to play out, which follows in suit with the fact that the phases of Bitcoin, the cycles of Bitcoin are lengthening over time, such as the bull markets are becoming less bullish and the bear markets are becoming more measured and less bearish over time. And with each of these, you can see here the bear market retracement here of phase 1, cycle 2, shot all the way up to the proximity of the 2.272. We can see here the bear market retracement of phase 2, cycle 2, shot all the way back up to the proximity of the 272. Look here again, cycle 3, phase 1 bear market retracement. We can see here that we've been waiting 4 years at this point to meet the proximity of the 272, which is anywhere from around, at lowest, around 170K, upwards towards around like 240, 250,000. But again, like I said, it could go way higher, especially considering the fact that with all the institutional adoption of spot Bitcoin ETFs in the United States, the growing adoption and integration, especially with the pro-crypto sentiment of Donald Trump and his current administration in America, and even outside of America, it's just growing and growing and growing and becoming more recognized for the revolutionary paradigm that it is, that being blockchain solutions. And obviously, even something that I mentioned recently on X is the project crypto that the SEC has been talking about, and how that's they are going to start transitioning the traditional financial markets, things like your stock assets, your bonds, various other things, and they're going to start moving those, which now currently has an off-chain status, onto an on-chain status, where like I said, we'll see the tokenization of all these assets and these bonds and other things. And that's something that BlackRock has been interested in. Their institutional investors, and obviously them being an asset manager of, to the degree of, I think it's like approximately 10 trillion, a little bit higher than that at this point. They're showing great interest into it. And this is something that I've been speaking about for a little over 2 years on this channel and even in my personal life, that the tokenization of the traditional markets, whether it be the assets or bonds or really just about all of it. Because if you're well read and you're well researched in decentralized finance, blockchain solutions, Bitcoin, the viable altcoin projects that have genuine use case, things like Ethereum or Cardano or Sonic, used to be known as Phantom, XYO, plenty of other solid blockchain solutions out there. This is just simply put it, the next wave. This is a paradigm that's going to, I think, shock the world as a major revolution. I think this is going to go down. Blockchain solutions abroad will go down as one of the most impactful technological innovations within the millennia-long continuum of technological advancements. Let's see here. If you look at the monthly, we're still seeing this uptrend here intact on the RSI. Something I went over in a number of videos ago. It's been probably over a month at this point. But we see the RSI here, it's just been ranging basically sideways in the median. You can see here each and every single time when Bitcoin peaks out, it goes above the median. Like each of these 3 instances here that I just highlighted, we have yet to see that happen. So again leads me to think that more likely than not, the all-time high for Bitcoin has not been set. And plenty of on-chain indicators are not, they're not flashing all-time signals. And one of the things I brought up recently is that we've seen, we have not seen many indicators that have historically called and signaled the cyclical all-time highs for Bitcoin. They are not printing the signals they should be printing. And it just doesn't make sense, all things considered, especially within the fundamental landscape and environment we're in, like I said, with the spot Bitcoin ETFs in America, pro-crypto sentiment of the Trump administration, BlackRock and the tokenization with the Project Crypto and the SEC that I just mentioned, and everything else that I'm sure a lot of you are already well aware of. It just doesn't make sense why we're in such an borderline immaculate fundamental landscape that this time around we're going to see every single one of these historical on-chain or even just simple technical indicators here, like for example this RBI that I have down here, all deviate from predicting and properly signaling the all-time highs. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I have a hard time computing it in my own mind that we're going to see every single one of these indicators that have historically predicted and called the all-time high properly fail when the fundamental landscape is quite literally never looked better ever in the past for Bitcoin and blockchain solutions, altcoins abroad. Again, here is the RVI. We don't even see it looking here at the Pi cycle indicator. We see each of these highs going all the way back to April 2013. We have yet to see it right here. I believe, again, we are just waiting for that to happen. The RVI trend down here that I've gone over plenty of times in recent videos, which I'm not going to go over again, but this again we have not seen the second yellow dot here. We have not seen the RVI move up to that second yellow dot, and that has happened literally every single time since February 2011. This is an over 14-year-long trend that has happened every single time. And again, I just don't see why it's not going to happen this time around with how good the fundamental landscape looks. And then even here, again, really kind of just beating a dead horse. But I mean, I don't feel like this really could be, put into people's minds, enough. The fact that we are seeing crucial indicators such as here with the open interest, the accumulation distribution of open interest money. God, this is such a mouthful of an indicator. Accumulation distribution, open interest money flow index here. This indicator down here has not also flashed its all-time high signal. We can see that it's sitting right here, and each and every single time we've seen these moves above this purple value here of around 54.55. Again, we have yet to see that. It actually looks very similar to the monthly RSI sitting its median that I went over. And again, lastly, again, beating a dead horse. If some of you that keep up with my videos are just tired of me going over these same things, I mean, I try to go over more briefly as I put out more and more videos just because I've gone over them so much. But I mean, really, there's, not too much to update. I mean, this, like I said, and I'm sure, a lot of you are well aware of. I mean, if we go back to the weekly here, I mean, we can see how boring, quote unquote boring. I think this bull market's been beautiful. Structure-wise, it's just, I think it's an elegant stair-stepping that we've seen here. I think it's a nice 5-stage impulse pattern. But I mean, for all things considered, especially in comparison to past bull runs, like here it's just been lackluster in the sense that it just that youthful vitality that Bitcoin had just not too long ago back here in 2020 to 2021 is just, it's not here anymore. We're seeing Bitcoin mature, and that's being shown through the fact that the Bitcoin spot ETFs, the institutional adoption, the further acceptance and proper recognition that it deserves by nation states, American and plenty of others included. We're starting to see Bitcoin submit its proper ontological stance within the real world of human civilization and human society, and that's a lot of people are will be quick to dismiss, like, this bull run has just been boring, it's been lackluster, like I said. But really, no, it's not. I mean, this is a good thing. It's the fact that it's showing, again, maturity. It's the fact that it's just not absolutely exploding like a buck wild youth anymore. It's calculated, it's strategic, it's again, I mean, it's elegant, honestly, is my personal take on it. And we're still waiting here for this yearly pattern to play out, which you can see here each of these times going back to 2015. 3 bullish candles, obviously with the exception of back here, these first 4 back in the earliest years of Bitcoin. Deviation that should be understood because that was in Bitcoin's prime of youth. That was really its stage of just buck wild vitality. But at this point, obviously, it's kind of evened out. We again 3 Bitcoin or 3 bullish candles in the bull run, 3 bullish candles, 3 bullish candles, and we're just waiting for, really, I think, this uptrend here to be met. Really can't be said enough. Towards somewhere at least 160K, upwards towards around 240, 250K, or maybe, again, just to point it out, maybe even higher. Maybe we do see that extended bull run that plenty of people have been speculating on, but, just to give some final remarks here, again, I believe we're reaching that first inflection point, that really the major inflection point for the adoption of Bitcoin, for the adoption of blockchain solutions abroad, for all of the altcoins that have viable use cases within the real world. And we're really, over the next 5 to 10 years, I think we're going to see blockchain solutions as a technology, as the revolutionary paradigm that it is, as an innovation within the information mediums and media, which I'm going to put out a video on that some point in the near future. It might take another month or so for me to get all that together. I haven't even started yet, but I firmly believe that Bitcoin, but more generally blockchain solutions, exists within the category of information medium and media innovations, which are the most impactful throughout human history. And I'll save the whole spiel on that for that video. But really, again, like I said, whether or not Bitcoin has an extended bull run this time around, whether or not it's going to top out later this year, I don't think it matters, because myself and plenty of other people whose opinions I trust, plenty of other people who are credible, it really seems like Bitcoin, regardless of what route it takes, is going to be somewhere with around 1 million or higher by 2030, 2032, 2033. And so really, I think that's really the bigger picture that a lot of people, and you guys as well, if I were to give any form of advice, should be focusing on, is not the, oh, the value is appreciating, the day-to-day price move, and it's time for me to take profit and make money. You should be here more so for the technology in and of itself, rather than just using and looking at Bitcoin or any other viable altcoin that has a genuine use case as just merely an investment vehicle, because it's more than that. It is a revolutionary technology that I think is going to shock the world. And if those who haven't seen it by now, and those who are just going to start seeing it over the next 5 to 10 years, are going to be late to the party, and they're going to miss out on, and have already missed out on, the best periods and the best moments to capitalize on this mind-blowing technology. But that was all that I wanted to go over and update and talk about in this video. As always, none of this is meant to be financial advice, but all that being said and everything gone over, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.